Hello everyone, my name is Giovanni from the Telestream closed caption team. I came from CPC, closed captioning, and I am working here with Telestream for a few months now, and we have some exciting things to show today. The topic of the discussion today is called verifying closed caption data in a file-based workflow. And this particular presentation was the same one that was presented at NAB conference in 2014, a few months ago. It was very well attended, and I'm very grateful that many of you have taken time out of your day to take a look at what we have to present. So let's get on with it. Let's move forward, and at the end, I certainly would appreciate any questions, and for those who know me, and you can reach out to me afterwards as well. So let's get going. So quality control is seen in file data. So as file-based workflows become more mature in our industry, there's a need to take a look at those files and analyze them, not only for audio and video quality, for metadata quality, especially captioning data. So let's take a look at some of the topics we're going to cover today. The first one is, where is the CEA 608 and 708 caption data stored? These are the two protocols that are used in the industry in Canada, the US, and in Mexico. And we need to understand where these are stored in the file formats. And we'll take a look at that in a second. We're also going to talk about typical limitation of software verification. There's software that can just take a look at caption, whether it's there or not. We'll take a look at some of those limitations there. We'll talk about advanced 708 caption attributes and what they are and where to look for them and how to check for them. Data is stored alongside captions that it's not necessarily caption data. So we'll talk about other data that can be in the video files in your server that you can check for. And we can also check about verifying not only captioning for television broadcast, but also for internet captioning. And of course, checking for common caption errors in a file-based workflow. So we'll talk about these topics one by one, and let's get going with the first one. Where is the captioning stored? And also we'll talk about emulating captioning viewing experience the same way your viewers at home do. And so let's get going with that. So I have some sample video files that have captioning, and we're going to talk about where those captions live. And the interesting thing is that they could be in different places in the file. So we'll take a look at some samples. There's not every single sample, but some of the most typical ones we're going to cover right now. So let's talk about VBI captioning. In this case, we have an XDCAM IMX30. Okay, it's got a specific MPEG-2 codecs, but VBI captioning refers to the actual blinking lights, otherwise known as line 21 in a broadcast field. And you can see in this particular example that the captions are actually stored in a particular vertical blanking interval. So that's one style of caption. It's very challenging for software verification because you have to be able to read those particular lines and extract the caption data and make sure it's correct. And it's not just limited to one caption channel. There could be several languages in that VBI, and so we'll talk about how we can look at that. And then I guess another way to look at captioning is inside of a track. In this case, we have an XDCAM MXF. Okay, it's a 422 MPEG-2 codec. It could be 1080i, it could be 720, so it's high definition. And the SMPTE track is actually in the MXF wrapper. It's not part of the video essence inside of the file, and it could contain a variety of different data. So we should be able to understand, to look at that, and typically this is a little easier to read than the standard def VBI. Let's look at another sample here. There's also something called user data. So let's say you have an MPEG-2 video file, whether it's wrapped in an MOV or whether it's wrapped in an MXF, but the actual data for captioning is stored in the essence video, meaning in the actual MPEG-2 elementary stream inside of the data. And this user data is a little harder to read because it's actually you have to read it frame by frame within the MPEG-2 structure. So this is very common, and in fact before MXF was really popular, this seemed to be the standard, and is still the standard for ATSC over-the-air captioning. It's stored in the MPEG-2 user data. Okay, let's talk about another file format that's more advanced, and this is still SMPTE 436M, but this is called an OP Atom, ASO2. And the way OP Atom is stored is kind of, or structured rather, is kind of different than other MXFs that are self-contained. You have different MXF files in different folders in a reference MXF. One of the MXFs is actually just the captioning. It's an MXF that just contains a SMPTE 436M CC track, and it links to the rest of the video. And just like the XD-CAM variety of MXF OP1A, it just has a variety of different data inside of that track, including 608 data and VChip and XDS. All right, let's look at a few more. This is more of a legacy captioning standard made popular by Panasonic, DV-CAM or DV25, DV50. It's a standard def. It could be an MOV, it could be an AVI, or it could be a .dv file. In those older days, that was really popular, but still some broadcasters use this format. And the way it's stored is it's called vertical auxiliary data, or VAUX data. And this is important because it's somewhere still in the Essence video, so it's stored within the actual DV codec inside of the file. So I'm going to adjust my microphone so that it's easier to hear. If you do have trouble hearing, please let us know. All right, let's move on to the next. So user data CC Essence. This is actually inside of the MOV wrapper. So let's say you have a ProRes, right? But the ProRes actually, in the before closed caption tracks were popular, inside ProRes MOV, there were some devices that could capture video and put the captions in the ProRes elementary stream. And this becomes confusing to some people because we have ProReses with different types of captions. If you have a Key Pro, for example, AJA, you can actually capture the video right from a caption source via HDSDI. And the actual CC captions is not a caption track, it's actually embedded into the ProRes codec. This is considered a legacy standard. Going forward, this is no longer going to be used by many people, but it is something that's out there, and there's got to be a way to verify it. And now the cousin of that is actually same thing. It's a ProRes, but it's actually in a separate caption track. If you look at the little graphic that I have on the right, there's actually a closed caption track in the structure of the MOV. So previously, let's go back one slide, there's no closed caption track. That means the captions are in the video track. But you can also have a closed caption track in there, and that's a lot easier to read. And if you play it back with QuickTime, you'll be able to turn the captions on and off so you can verify that they're there. All right, let's move on with that. And one thing that I do want to talk about before I move on with this is closed captions in ProRes can support VChip and XDS as long as they're in the closed caption track, but you cannot support AFD. AFD, active format description, is not supported in the closed caption track for QuickTime. Okay? So let's talk about one other way to check for captions, and that is when you have a separate file. Many times you have a file format called .sec. If you deal with captions, you know that this is a very popular file format. But what's interesting about that is before you transcode it or before you deliver it, you have to make sure that the SEC matches your video. So there's ways to play back your video with SEC and just make sure it matches before you deliver it. And many of you who deliver to, say, something like iTunes, you deliver an SEC file along with your ProRes, you have to be able to verify it. If you don't verify it, they could fail it and tell you, okay, it's not in sync, or just drifting, or it's just not starting at the right time. So it's really important, if the captions aren't baked into the video, that you can check them with a video player that can, kind of show you a preview of what the SCC is going to look like once it's married together with the video. All right, let's move on to some typical limitations of software verification. That's the second topic. It does not detect multiple services. So if you have more than one language in captioning, let's say you have English and French or English and Spanish, which many broadcasters do. If you check it with, say, QuickTime, and QuickTime can show you the captions, there's no way to check for other services. It's just going to give you the one language. So keep in mind that captioning is not limited to one language, and it needs to be verified for multiple languages. And as I mentioned earlier, VBI, the vertical blanking intervals, otherwise known as line 21, that's difficult to detect. Okay, usually the only way to do it is you have to buy all this hardware. You know, you have to play it out to a scope or some sort of monitor that can decode captions. With software, it's very difficult to read that data right on your desktop. Okay, next is the text-only presence of data which could be incomplete. So there's software out there where you can open it up. Let's say, like for an example that is media info, you can open up a caption file or a video file that has captions in it, and it'll just say, yes, there's some captions there. It says 608, it's got 708, and you say, okay, great, it's ready to go. The captions are there. Well, they might not be complete. Maybe half of the captions are missing, or maybe the captions are actually drifting or not in sync. That doesn't tell you whether the caption data is complete. There has to be a way to verify all of the caption data inside of the video file. And not all codecs and caption protocols are supported. Traditionally, I've had like 4 different video players and 4 different software to be able to check caption files or caption video files, because it seems like one supports MXF, the other one supports MOV, the other one supports AVI. It's kind of like convoluted, and unfortunately for broadcasters that deal with a lot of different file formats, it can be very daunting to check for all the different caption files. And the same thing goes with hardware. You know, there's hardware that can play back QuickTime, and there's hardware that can play back MPEG-2, but it seems like it's hard to just, you know, be able to verify all the different codecs and caption protocols, as I showed earlier. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Sync issues of captions may not be detected. As I mentioned, there's something called the caption drift. And what captioning drift is basically the captions start on time, and over an hour they'll drift, like say by 3 seconds early or late. That has to be detected prior to being able to be delivered. And many softwares don't allow you to do that. And positioning of caption text on screen is not verified. That's another thing. So let's say you have a caption, it's in sync, and what the problem is, it's blocking half of the lower thirds. So you have to be able to play it back and verify that, you know, the positioning is properly done. And there's new legislation that's coming next year from the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, in the U.S. that is going to check for these kind of things. So it's important to verify that the positioning of your captioning on the text is properly done for accessibility. And of course, there's sidecar caption files for internet and TV transcoding. You know, you've heard of SMPTE time text, WebVTT, DFXP, SCC. So these files you're going to deliver, whether you're going to put it on your website or whether you're going to transcode it with, say, Telestream Vantage. Well, you have to be able to check those files to make sure that they're going to match before you transcode. And that's kind of tricky. You have to have the right tools to do that. Okay, so let's, someone asked me a question here, you know, Extreme Reach. Extreme Reach uses a variety of different things. I would contact them about it. I know that they were using MPEG-2 a lot, and now they're also supporting QuickTime. So it's kind of changes now. But yeah, they use a lot of different things. Okay. So let's talk about advanced CA 708 features, okay? And 708 is a standard for high definition captioning. High definition, as it's broadcast in the US, contains 608. It also contains 708. and font styles and colors. If you've ever been to a public place, let's say it's a place where they serve food, or they're showing a sports game on the the flat panel monitors, after work, people populate these places. You'll see that sometimes the font is different. It's not the text, the white text on the back, a black background with the box on it. It might be translucent. It might have a different font. It looks different than the regular style of closed captions. That's advanced 708. Okay, font styles and colors. They also can do translucency, as I mentioned, and opacity parameters. They support Asian languages. Okay, although that's part of the 708 specification. There's not any TVs I've seen that can support that. But TVs do support translucency and opacity, and they support different fonts and colors. So that brings me to my next point, and that is, in your professional broadcast facility, you have scopes. You have different types. Different companies make different HD, SDI monitoring that can decode closed captioning, but they do not show these advanced 708 features. I have not seen one that does. And when you air that on TV, the folks at home, they do have that feature. So really, these professional scopes may be lacking in the ability to verify these font styles and colors and translucencies that you can use with the advanced 708. There's also 16:9 positioning. As you know, high definition is 16:9, so you have more real estate to move the captions from left to right. And you can language tag. So if you have multiple languages, you can tag the language with English, French, Spanish, whatever you need. And that's also part of the advanced 708 features. And you should be able to verify that tagging with software only. And of course, you can have up to 63 services of multiple languages, although because of bandwidth constraints, we've only been able to add 6 languages to 708 before it's too much bandwidth to be able to actually air it. And of course, there's drop shadows. So these are all advanced 708 features that you should be able to verify. Okay. So verifying data stored with captioning. Okay, let's talk about that. There's other data besides captioning, and some of that data could be XDS and VChip. For example, in 608, you can have a particular rating or program identification and how long the program is, total running time. All these things you can verify as well. And that's important to verify without having to use some sort of hardware solution, doing it with software only. Active format description, different aspect ratios. This is important to verify before you air it. Timecode track. Okay, that's important if you're going to transcode. If you're going to transcode, you got to make sure that your captions match your timecode track in your video file. The next item that I want to cover is verifying formatting for internet captioning. So this is one legislation that's called the CVAA, Communication Video Accessibility Act of 2010 by the FCC, and it calls for being able to convert captions from TV to captioning on the internet. In this example, on the graphic, I'm showing YouTube video player, and you can see YouTube video player, you can actually upload an SCC. You can upload an actual caption file for television, and YouTube will actually do its best to keep the formatting. For example, on TV, there's something called split captions, where when 2 people are talking, you have captions on one end and on the other end, just like on the graphic. So that is maintained. So it's important that you verify that formatting so that your web team is keeping the captions the same way they were aired. Roll-up captions should be kept that way. Pop-on captions should be kept that way. Positioning on the screen so they don't block a lower third, that should be kept that way as well. And there's different caption file formats for the internet. So verification of the positioning is critical as well when you're uploading captioning to the internet. All right, the next step is checking for common CC errors. So we talked about drifting out of sync, captioning. That happens usually when you're converting the frame rate. Many online captioning videos are 2398, but it was aired in 2997 or 60i or 5994 720p. But when you upload the original file that was shot in film, that's 2398, and oftentimes that's not going to match. So it's important that you check that drift. As I mentioned, check to make sure that the text formatting is following the standards of accessibility. There's times also when 708 is missing and only 608 is found. So you have an HD MPEG-2, and let's say you have some software that says, okay, well, give us an SCC file and we'll transcode into MPEG-2. Well, what happens is you transcode it, you get the MPEG-2, you send it to your TV station, and they fail it. They say that we're just not seeing 708, and only 608 is found. So it's important that you check your MPEG-2 or whatever file you're sending, whether it's to Extreme Reach or to a broadcaster, to PBS, to make sure that both 608 and 708 are there. And that applies to high definition specifically. It's also important that the syntax of the caption file is compatible with the transcode engine. So, you may get an SCC file that was made, I've seen someone make an SCC file by hand, manually, and it just doesn't work. And so just because you have an SCC, you got to make sure it's actually compliant and it matches the right syntax. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of problems. And also, of course, the same thing applies for the syntax of the file for internet captioning players. So you have to check these things. Spelling and transcription mistakes, of course. How can you check to see if the actual captioning is right unless you actually have some sort of player to read the captions and spot check them before you air them? This is an interesting one. Let's say you air something with captioning, but then you are going to put that on the internet or you're going to put it on VOD. And that means that you have to edit that video. But the captioning is not necessarily matching that edit. Once you edit the video, the caption is no longer matching. So it's important to make sure that an edited video is checked against the captioning. Otherwise, you're going to get like a video you're playing back on the internet or on VOD that halfway through the video, all of a sudden the captions are not matching at all. So it's important to check that once you edit your video. All right. Next, let's talk about emulating television captioning viewing experience. Okay, so what I mean by viewing experience, I'm talking about the viewers at home. You should have the ability to view your video the same way that the people at home are going to see it prior to airing it. And you have to make sure you support advanced 708, like the fonts. You have to make sure you check to make sure the VChip and XDS are working, and the active format description. You have to also check for specific codec quality, such as MPEG-2 transport stream. That's exactly what you're going to air, so it's good that you check the actual final transcode before you actually air it. And to make sure that you can select the other languages, just like people at home can do with their remote control. So these are really important things. Okay, so let's talk about the demo. And let me demonstrate some of these things, and that's the last part of my presentation here. Let's go ahead and do that. So let's say I have a file format here, which I happen to have under my my desktop. I have a few samples here. So for example, this is an IMX30, so it's a standard def MXF. Let's say I'm going to watch it with a popular video player. In this case, it's VLC. You can see it's got vertical blanking intervals as I play the video. And as the captions trigger, those vertical blanking intervals trigger certain text. Now, people who are used to this video player, they know they can go to video or subtitles and check their subtitle track, but in this case, it's grayed out. It's not letting me see it. Why is it not letting me see it? Because this player does not understand VBI. It has no idea what VBI is. So what are my options here to check for that? Well, there is a way to say we have a product here that I can say I select it to CC1, and I can drag it, and it's going to look at the vertical blanking intervals and try to give me a dump of all the captions it finds. And there they are. That's one way to do it. Let's talk about another way. So let's say this same file, I'm going to try to check it with media info. Again, no captions because it doesn't understand VBI. It doesn't understand. So it's basically a problem if you're relying on media info to check standard def captioning. And so we had to come up with a tool, an internal tool, to check that. Let me show you our internal tool that we use. So I'm going to open it up and open up that same file format. Here's the IMX30, and I'm going to check for CC1 and XDS, AFD, and other stuff. So there they are. So in real time, I can play it back, and that's how we do it. We had to come up with some sort of tool because there wasn't anything out in the market to be able to check that. And the same thing applies for other file formats. So let's look at a couple other ones here. We have a transport stream here. Now this will show you in VLC, because it's MPEG-2, you do have the ability to turn on the captions there. And sometimes it kind of works okay. The position is not great, but it doesn't give you the advanced features, right? So for example, I can open up my little tool here and try to see if I can find those advanced features here. So here's the transport stream. And I can check for service 1. Actually, that one doesn't have captions, so I know that one's wrong. But let's look at one that does have captions, like, for example, this one right here. And you can see that if I open up this MXF, this is an OP1A MXF, I can see the advanced 708 features. I can see the V-chip. I can see the AFD tags. And if I look at 608, I can look at that as well, and that gives me the 608 style of captions. And it's important that I know where the captions live, like 436M, right? That's the SMPTE track. So that's really critical to check for that style of captions. Now let's talk about a product that Telestream is working on and is about to release. It's called Switch. And Switch has a really cool feature. I can actually open up a ProRes here. Okay, this is a ProRes file. And I can open up a secondary SCC file. And what Switch can do for me is it actually renders out the SCC overlay on top of the actual video. Now, many of you might say, well, QuickTime 7 does that. Well, what QuickTime 7 doesn't do is it doesn't allow you to open up MXF files without having a plugin. And what Switch is, it actually has its own native render engine. It doesn't use QuickTime. It doesn't use FFmpeg. It uses something proprietary engine for playback. And so I can check the SCC with the MXF before I go ahead and transcode it and convert it to something else. And that's really critical. Now for VOD, that's really important because I can actually open up a transport stream 422 and I can open up that SCC file prior to transcode, and I can actually watch it, with captions. And it supports proper positioning. It supports left and right, up and down, roll up, pop on, the way an actual scope or an actual professional broadcast can do it. And so that's really important. And that's basically my presentation, about verification of captioning. You have to have the right tools to verify 608, 708, advanced 708, timing, positioning. You have to be able to verify different file formats, and you have to have those tools ready available, because being able to, if you have to rely on hardware and scopes and TV monitors to check, like, say, a variety of file formats that have trouble, that's going to take you a long time. Whereas with the right tools that are software verification of this data structure, you'll be able to see it right away, and then find out what the issue is and how to fix those issues. And that's what Telestream does. We want to be able to help people look at this data, fix it, and then transcode it again and deliver it on time. And that's our goal. So I'm going to open now the session for questions. Certainly I'm also going to provide my contact information at the end. So any questions, please go ahead and use the questions part of the GoToWebinar, and then I can help answer them. So the first question I have here is, what do you recommend for checking 608 and 708 as media info is not 100% accurate? Well, it's not just a matter of checking whether the captions have 608 and 708. You should also be able to play them back. And so right now, there's really very few tools that can do that other than playing them baseband out to a scope and checking them that way. One thing that we did in the past was we were able to use like a MPEG-2 modulator and actually connect it to the coax of a television set, like a consumer television set. We bought like something from the store, and television sets have coax inputs that have closed caption decoding. The problem is, what if you have an MXF? Well, you can't, stream an MXF to a coax on a TV set. Or what if you have a ProRes? That's not going to work either. So what we're looking to do is we're looking to add this functionality to our Switch platform. And so please stay tuned. I think that that is something we're looking at currently, and we're hoping we can add that to our Switch program, not just to check SEC files, but to also check and do the same type of things as our internal tools do, like the tool I showed earlier. Let me show you that tool again. So let's say I'm going to open up something with our tool, and we have the code to read the captioning, right? So I can open up, let's say I'm going to open up a different file format here. Let's open up a QuickTime ProRes. And the QuickTime ProRes has advanced 708, as you can see, and it has VChip. And I can check it for 608, I can check it for 708. And here's the 608 right here. And many people ask us, well, how did you get that to work? That's a really good question. The secret behind being able to render real 708 and 608 is our MCC file format. And this MCC file format is basically a data dump of the VANC. It's what SCC is not. And it supports all the different frame rates. And here's the data dump. So within this this data dump of CDP packets here, it contains multiple languages. It contains VChip, XDS, AFD. So what we're doing is, when we're reading a video file that has captions, I don't care if it's an MPEG-2 or an MXF or some other file format, we're extracting the data and dumping it out into this format. And once you have it in this format, then it's easy to extract. It's basically, kind of like opening up Mac Caption or Caption Maker and just saying, okay, I'm going to check it for 608. So I just drag it, and then it extracts it. Or I'm going to check it for 708. I drag it, I extract it. And I can see both. So the same thing applies to a video player. By taking a look at the MCC structure, we're able to, to render out the true 708. Had we extracted an SEC, well, SEC doesn't have 708 at all, so there's no way to read it. And that's what's important about our MCC file format and the ability to utilize it as a tool to check not only the captions, but all their data like VChip, XDS, and AFD. I hope that helped answer that question. If there's any other questions, I'd love to hear them. If not, then I can just close. I'll give everyone a few minutes here. Looks like there's no more questions, so I would just say, you know, definitely. Oh, there are more. Okay. Okay, I see. All right. Whoa, yeah, there are a lot more. Okay. Will stations take 708 and mix 608? Okay, that's a good question. So captioning that has 608, like say in this case that's 608, they're not going to take 708 and mix 608. If they have 708, chances are they also have 608, so they'll use tools to down convert it to 608. They'll just take the 608 that's existent inside the MXF or the MPEG or the ProRes, and they'll convert that to line 21. That's how broadcast equipment like the Terranex and the up-down cross or Matrox or other hardware do it. They take the 608 that's existing and use that. They're not going to convert 708 to 608. There is a way to do that with software, but that's just not what stations typically do. Okay. Okay, let's take a look at that. Sorry if you're having audio problems. I'm trying my best to speak clearly. The video player is not available. This is just for our internal use. As I mentioned, this is something that we're just using internally, but we're hoping that we can migrate those features to our Switch software, which is really inexpensive. And please go to telestream.net and look up Switch to find out more, to beta test the Switch player right now that can verify SEC files. The other question is, does Telestream have any products which take a transcript and run it against matching video file and provide timestamps? That's a little off topic, but I think that's more about caption preparation. And yes, we do have something called auto timestamp. And auto timestamp is built into our Mac Caption and Caption Maker products, and you can bring a transcript and it will automatically provide timestamps. If you have more questions about that, please reach out to me and I'll help you out. Currently, Switch does not have the ability to look at captioning embedded, but we're hoping to add that feature in the future. And I believe we will. The other question is, with many standards out there, is there any one that might be trending towards an industry standard? Yeah, MXF seems to be, it's more of a matter of what the stations decide and what the servers decide. But the good news is that you know, if you have Telestream Vantage, we're able to transcode from one standard to another. So if you upload a ProRes or an MXF or an MPEG-2, we can transcode to whatever is needed without losing the captions. So it's important that you know that, but there's really not like a the only standards are the protocols, 608 and 708, and they can live in a lot of different places, and that's why this is so important to verify where they are. Yes, we're trying to put verification of not just caption data, but XDS and VChip. That's something that we're working on with the developers to see if that can be added to Switch. If you have more recommendations of that, I'd love to hear them. You know, if you have feedback and you really want those features in Switch, send me an email. I'll definitely forward that to our developers. Web and broadcast, de facto standard, no such thing. SMPTE group is trying to do something for the internet. There's also another consortium that's doing WebVTT. The key thing is to have a file format that that supports positioning as well as just caption timing. Although someone like YouTube is supporting more television captioning standards, so you could actually upload an SEC to YouTube, and it has the same formatting as TV broadcast. So it really depends on the player, and unfortunately, web developers they're not really hip to broadcast standards, so that's one of the challenges. But SMPTE Time Text, SMPTE 2052, otherwise known as, is an effort to try to come up with a standard for both web and broadcast. So the other question is, some players do not support SEC. How can we generate more formats for web, SRT, DFXP, SMPTE? Well, we have a product called Caption and Caption Maker, and that can convert SEC to a variety of the other web internet formats, including SMPTE, Time Text, and SRT. And another question here, I'll just take a few more. Another question here is, if your file has both 608 and 708 A53 captions, how can you be sure which captions you are checking? Yeah, that's important. So like say if I'm looking up an MPEG-2 transport stream, there has to be a way that the software can actually check, right, whether or not that has that particular kind of captions or not. So see, here in this tool, it's telling me it's user data. So it's looking at the MPEG-2 user data, the A53. But if I open up, like say, another file format, like this MXF that has VBI, so it's telling me it's got line 21. So yeah, that's important. It's not just a matter of checking for 608 and 708, but to know where that captioning is, whether it's A53, VBI, or a track like SMPTE 436M. We'll switch it to see captioning embedded in the files. I think right now it's only SEC. Okay, let's see. Yeah, we have a lot of files. Unfortunately, I'm not able to get to all the questions. There is one question here. Is it switch only Mac-based? Right now, it is Mac-based, but no, we will have a Windows version as well. So that's coming, both on Mac and Windows. It's a great question. SRT absent of position information? Yes, it is. That's why they came up with WebVTT, which is SRT with positioning. So WebVTT is a good one. And this webinar will be archived. It is being recorded for future viewing. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate your effort to participate in this webinar. I hope that I'm able to help, and if you have any captioning questions, or if you have a file that you can't figure out where the captions are, I'll be happy to help you. Just reach out to me. The email is on the chat window. It's giovannig@telestream.net. I'm a captioning expert along with another team of captioning experts here, and we're happy to help you. Whether you're an existing customer or a new customer, or just simply have captioning questions, please send them to me, and I'll be happy to help.